All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Reactionary Opinions, the most based and reactionary show on the African continent. The team is here. Mr. Patriarch is here. Someone's Justus. I think there's a bit of an echo coming through there by you. You want to just sort of mute yourself quickly? I'll go ahead and mute you there. Sorry, there we go. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. The team's here. Mr. Patriarch, how are you doing this evening?
Doing good. Just indulged in some fried chicken down in a beer, and I'm excited to learn about Agenda 21 tonight before getting scared and running off to Tolbach tomorrow morning. So this is good.
Yeah. Sir Russell the Based, how are you doing there, my man?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm happy it's Friday. I'm looking forward to hearing some about Agenda 21 and hopefully to have what I believed confirmed.
Yes, it's a good night tonight. It's Friday, the 2nd of October. Our guest this evening is none other than Justus Kilian. I sure hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. As me being a Soti, it's going to have to be Justice, but it's Justus is the correct way of pronouncing it. Justus runs a YouTube channel called Agenda 21 Truth South Africa. It is, in my opinion, one of the most information-filled channels out there. If you haven't subscribed to his channel, I will put the link for his channel in the description. Go and check it out. It is really, really interesting channel. Justus is a wealth of knowledge and incredibly detailed in the stuff and the analysis that he does on his videos and that sort of thing, ranging everything. I would capture Justus's channel about everything revolving around Agenda 21 and, of course, the globalist agenda and all of those insidious ideas that they have. Justus, how's it going there, my man?
Very good in you, Scott.
Yeah, man. Great. Never been better. So, Justus, before we jump into this, why don't you just sort of give the guys an introduction about who you are and what you're all about?
Right. Well, how far back do you want me to go? Okay, so my name is Justus Kilian, and I started it was really just a modest Facebook group back in 2012 to sort of post the information that I find while I'm learning about Agenda 21 myself. And what drove me to it was the e-toll gantries going up in Gauteng. And I believe in the States they call them Easy Pass or something like that. But I saw them going up everywhere, and I have followed a lot of, nutcase people over the years who talked about Agenda 21 a lot and what the objectives are. And when I saw the gantries going up and heard what the government and Sanral was saying about it, it sounded to me immediately like, hey, this is exactly the same thing. And of course, there was nobody in our country covering that angle. I know now why. Back then it was, I didn't quite understand why, but then I carried on with that until now. And I kind of in all that time tried to find other influential people to try and help me bring this message to people. And that is a bad idea for anyone who's thinking about starting a similar activism type activity. Don't do that. Just do what you know should be done yourself, because it wasted a lot of time. And those people, although they learned a lot and understand the system now, they all have their own things that they are going to care more about. So anyway, bit of advice. Then I also started another page in the meantime around 2014 called Climate Change Truth South Africa, where basically I posted a record of news about global warming and climate change from mainstream media or scientific sources that is also not covered in our media, because our media only covers one angle of that, and it's that there is a consensus and that there's always been a consensus, and how can you be so stupid not to believe the consensus? That's basically all you hear from our media. In other places in the world, they do a slightly better job. Here, they don't do any job at all. So people can also go check that page out. I haven't posted anything there since COVID took over as the new Trojan horse. But the other one will be back, so activity will resume again there soon. And then I quit my job working in post-production at MultiChoice in the beginning of 2019 because I wanted to become an independent video creator, and I was stuck there being a post-production sound engineer, and nothing about that was ever going to change. And I knew that I always wanted to pursue this path of creating content about Agenda 21. And I, again, didn't start out doing it right away. I should have. But I was chasing, I guess, immediate financial security. And in retrospect, that wasn't a good move. But about a year later, a little over a year after I quit, a year and 2 months or so, we hit lockdown. I was just starting to get a little bit of independent work in, and then we hit lockdown, and all of that became basically illegal. Then a friend of mine who I've spoken to over the years quite a lot, I met him on Facebook through another mutual friend, and we spoke for about 2 years a lot about Agenda 21, which, by the way, other people who haven't heard of this much, you've heard of it more than you think, because its other name is sustainable development. They are the same thing. They are not loosely related. They are synonyms. So yeah, you've heard about it more than you think. But I've spoken to this friend of mine for a couple of years, and when lockdown hit, he also basically lost his business, which was a sound and lighting company. And he started making YouTube videos about New World Order stuff, because he has quite in-depth knowledge about that from a family perspective. His dad was invited to be involved in one of the very elite organizations. So his dad tried to expose this and blow the whistle on it and come up with a plan to defeat it. He's passed away since, but so my friend Desmond, you may have heard of him, 00 Des is his channel on YouTube. He convinced me to, although my channel has existed since I think about 2014 or 16 or 15 or something like that, I didn't really post any videos on it because I was not a video creator and I was busy. I had a busy life. So he said to me then, well, start doing it now, because he was already at that. He started a few weeks before me, and he really studied how to grow a YouTube channel, and he had unique information to give people. So he grew really, really fast and helped me to also grow substantially. But he motivated me to start making content, because I also couldn't do anything else. I mean, me and my wife were basically locked into the house with 2 kids, and she still had to work from home during the day. And I helped to babysit during the day, and then I could work basically from around 10 at night to 4 in the morning. And then it's Groundhog Day the next day. So that's how it started. If anyone goes back and watch my earlier videos, the very beginning ones, the first, 8 or 10 of them were all done. Cameras started rolling after midnight, some after 1 a.m. So if I look like I'm stoned, I was really, really, really tired. But that's how it started, and the channel has done really well. The audience I've built up is really loyal, and hopefully I've taught some of them some things. A lot of them by now know quite a bit about the whole agenda already, which helps because we need to make more people aware of what it is, how it looks, how it's costing them money in their lives, because they can then choose to not comply. A large part of it relies on compliance. And many times people just comply out of ignorance.
Yeah, I think that's a good point over there. Sorry, Justus, I'm just going to mute you because there's a bit of an echo coming through. Sorry. That's a very good point. But what I want to, the reason why I called this episode Agenda 21 is real is because there are actually still, can you believe it? There are actually still people out there that believe that Agenda 21 is still a conspiracy theory. Okay, when it clearly isn't. I mean, 1992, I believe, the Rio de Janeiro, conference on environment and development in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Obviously, that's where they drafted the whole document, and it's, I think, probably 300 odd pages long. And it's an actual document. You can get it off of the internet. If you Google it, it's literally the first thing that comes up, and it's right there, and it explains everything, and it's so clear. There's nothing. It's not hidden. It's not a conspiracy. It's not. I guess it's just the way that you read it or the way that you understand it that kind of makes the difference, I guess. And like you said, a lot of people out there, like you said, Justus, a lot of people out there just sort of, but it's, how could you be so stupid not to believe the status quo or the current zeitgeist or narrative that's being punted out there? And when, it's still out there. I mean, just to give you an idea, I found an article now from 2015. Okay. It says Agenda 21, a conspiracy theory puts sustainability in the crosshairs. And it's not a conspiracy theory. It's like, it's right there. Anyone can see it. And it's so blatant. Why do you think, Justus, if it's so out there and blatant and it's not hidden, I mean, the United Nations is a shady organization. Okay. We all know this. They're dodgy as hell. Okay. But at this point in time, they don't even try to hide their shadiness. It's all done sort of right in front of your face. Why do you think oaks are still so doff? Like, just they don't care. Why? Why do you think?
Well, number one, they don't know what everything it entails, and a lot of it is written in language that sounds fabulous. So why would you question it? And the thing to remember about the Agenda 21 agreement itself from 1992 is that it is just a framework agreement, the global blueprint for development for the 21st century. And there are a lot of other things that flow from it. That is not the totality of Agenda 21. I'll get back to that. But the other thing to understand is that when you read through it, a lot of it will sound, if you can stand reading it, because it's written in a type of language that's not comfortable to read. But it doesn't at first strike you as something really sinister. But what I want people to understand is that that is how a Trojan horse works. It has to look good on the outside. And when you go look at the framework agreement and what flows from it, and there are other global treaties, big things that people have heard about, and they don't associate it with Agenda 21, but like the Paris Accord, that's a whole other treaty that flows out from it. And your national legislation will be harmonized with Agenda 21, and they will often call it sustainable development, but sometimes you're lucky enough that they have the balls to not and use its real name, Agenda 21, and they purposefully avoid that name because it does sound sinister. They don't often use it. They've, for some reason, much more comfortable using Agenda 2030. I don't know why, But
My time, maybe.
I don't know. You hardly ever heard the press or anyone call it Agenda 21. It was always sustainable development. Because how can you be against that?
Something that I've noticed also, Justus, is that they call these sort of agreements, they call them non-binding, and that's also like, I don't know, and then they also use language like 157 or 170 countries or whatever have signed on to this idea and stuff. So that doesn't sound very non-binding to me,
Well, yeah, and the way in which you can tell that it's non-binding is whenever you read our legislation where they talk about, sorry, I'm just talking and looking for an article because I want to read you a quote. But just give me 1 second.
No, it's all good, bro. It's all good. I'm going to go into the comments over here quickly. Wait, did you get, while you're looking for that article, if you got that article, I want to go into some things over here, comments over here, dagbrekers, yeah. Simon Verster, the person that single-handedly broke the ZACP, I guess, is in the comments section over here. I wonder how that came about to be. But anyway, Dagbrekers, yeah, the Wizard, how's it? Paz, yeah, how's it? Tanya van der Venter says, hi guys, how's it going? Daniel van Straten, how's it? And a couple of people in the comments section. Good to have you here, guys. Remember to like the video because that brings people to our channel, I think. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, go ahead, Justus, sorry.
Yeah, so when you read our own legislation, whenever they talk about sustainability goals or objectives that are part of the goals of the legislation, they will use words like commitments and obligations. Those are not words that you associate with something being voluntary. It was voluntary before you signed it. Yeah. Once you signed it, that's how signing things work.
Yeah, that's when it doesn't become optional,
Yeah, and the other way in which it's not voluntary is that many of their measures are it's a condition for international finance from the World Bank and IMF. If you read our Environmental Management Act, the 1998 version, this is what I was looking for. You can look for the National Environmental Management Act 107 of 1998, and then you search the document for the term Agenda 21, and you find under the definitions. Under definitions, it says the minister must initiate an annual must initiate an annual performance report on sustainable development to meet the government's commitment to Agenda 21. Commitment, right? Then in point B, it says the annual performance report must cover all relevant activities of all national departments and spheres of government. All relevant organs of state must provide information to the minister by a date to be determined by the minister for the purposes of the report referred to in paragraph A, and this may consist of an assembly of information compiled for other purposes. And also, the purpose of the report shall be to provide an audit and a report of the government's performance in respect of Agenda 21, review procedures for coordinating policies and budgets to meet the objectives of Agenda 21, review the progress on a public educational program to support the objectives of Agenda 21. Now, this reporting that they talk about here is what is used to is used as conditions for loans from the World Bank and IMF, basically. So that's just another way in which it's not so voluntary.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's the sort of the qualifying criteria for loans and all that stuff from the IMF.
Because those are UN agencies. People don't see them as UN agencies, but It's the World Bank of the United Nations. It's not
Pretty much. Yeah.
It's not the Bank of Kumbaya. We all decided we wanted to form a bank together. It's the Bank of the United Nations.
Yeah. They didn't come together and say around a campfire and say, let's all be nice people and, let's all not have insidious agendas and all of that, because there's big money involved in these sort of things. But let's not conspire against nations and all that sort of thing. Let's not do that. It's not like that happened. Russell, you had a couple of things that you wanted to chat to Justus about. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, what also amazes me is that South Africa especially is just one of those countries that whenever there's something at the United Nations that needs to be signed onto, they're almost first in line to sign up for it. If you look at our legislation, it's like this government loves being an international player. Forget about what's in the interest of South Africans. They just want to be an international player to play with all the big boys. They want to go play with the big boys the whole time. You forget about, hey, what's going on here? They want to go and they love this internationalism. We saw Cyril Ramaphosa, the first opportunity he got, he was there talking at the United Nations, talking the biggest lot of nonsense too, saying nothing as usual, blurting out whatever. And it's very frustrating. And I think, like what you said, Agenda 21, Agenda 20, the World Bank, the IMF, the various other the World Health Organization, they're all integrated to form a worldwide government, directly and indirectly. World Trade Organization, they're all formed to internationalize the whole world, and not just on an economic level, but literally on every level of society. So Agenda 21 is not just about sustainable development. It's a cog in a much bigger wheel, in a much bigger machine. That's just one part of it. And once you've understood the international agenda behind the whole United Nations and you believe it, and the constant wanting to internationalize everything, then believing Agenda 21 is very, very easy, because it fits the language, it fits the overall big picture. You know what I mean? So for me, it was a agenda. When I first heard about Agenda 21 and that sort of thing, I said, yeah, I don't have to read any documents. By the sounds of it, it's true, because it fits in exactly with all the other agendas. You know what I mean? It's almost like the United Nations as a whole. The United Nations as a whole, and the way they do things, they've got a language. And once you've tuned into the language and listened to it enough, I know what that means.
And Cyril,
that's for me how it works. And Cyril sounds just like one of them.
He speaks it, and so does Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. She also speaks it fluently. Patricia de Lille, as bad as I think she is as a politician, she speaks that language fluently. Many others of them speak it fluently.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you think that all three big parties in South Africa are internationalist in nature,
you can't vote against it. That's how voluntary it is.
Correct. So you as an individual, if you vote for one of those three parties, okay, you vote internationalism over your country. There's no ways you can vote against it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it actually gets quite scary. It actually is very, very scary how this democracy and this voting thing is just a smokescreen usually for a wider agenda. They give us the privilege of voting, but yet all the politicians, not all, but 90% of the politicians, almost all the institutions, the academics at universities, the wherever, professional bodies, all this sort of thing have got their tentacles. It's almost like a specter, like the tentacles moving out throughout a country and internationally. And that's the way I see in the big picture. I know Agenda 21 is part of it, but in the big picture, that is the way I see things. And it's not, for me, it's not difficult to grasp or understand.
So within the big picture of setting up that internationalist global government system that you talk about, Agenda 21 would be all the excuses for control that government wants in three main spheres of economy, ecology, and equity or social equity. Economy is obvious. Environment or ecology is not so. I mean, it's obvious if you stop and think about it, but we take it for granted that means everything around you, your environment that you live in, and it has a social equity aspect to it, which is why you will find much of the critical race theory stuff that we see on TV for the last few years has been brought into the education systems of most countries in the world through UNESCO and UNICEF. So, and it's been going on for 20 years, and we're seeing the fruits of it now. So, or starting to see it. There's more to come, but yeah, it's the excuse for control, and it's control of everything, all land, water, animals, all food, production, construction, human beings, energy, everything.
It's basically like this. The politicians are saying to the ordinary people, you don't know how to govern yourselves. We're going to do it for you. You know, and you saw that with COVID, didn't you? You saw that with COVID, right? You can't be trusted to take care. So we are going to do X, Y, and Z. That was the narrative throughout the world with regards to these regulations and lockdowns and, you know, ridiculousness. But I mean, back to Agenda 21, and Agenda 2030. Is that just the add-on to Agenda 21, or is it the super?
As I said, yeah. So Agenda 21 was the first framework agreement, and there's been two evolutions of it since then, two big ones that people have definitely heard of. The first transition, if you want to call it that, was to the Millennium Development Goals. And then around 2015, it became the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And there are 17 of them, and there are 167 or something targets under those 17 goals, and there are 230, I think, indicators that they measure performance on. But it's an extension of the same thing. The 100-year plan has phases to it, and 2030 is one of the important target dates, and 2040 as well. And then the African Union Sustainable Development version is called Agenda 2063. So I don't know why they picked a random number like that, but there are the global blueprints as it evolved from Agenda 21 was the Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals. But within countries, you will also find other ones, like there's the Tshwane 2055 plan for the Greater Johannesburg and Pretoria area. Now, that is also an interesting phenomenon that you find a lot where they are implementing Agenda 21, and they'll, again, never call it that when they're doing it, but it is the characteristic of moving away from local elected governments to regional governments. So they create things like Tshwane. And also our government, our country has had for a while now, it changed from 53 to 52 a few elections ago. I can't remember which one, but we have 52 districts in the country. And just recently, in the last 2 weeks, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma announced that government is adopting the new district management model, or district development model, DDM. Now, the districts back way before the DA became the Democratic Party and changed their logo, they were advocating for abolishing the districts because they said it was a unnecessary extra level of government, which I agree with. But now, the government through Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma has adopted these districts in the new district development model, and the DA was amazed. They couldn't understand. At least that's what they pretend. I'm sometimes uncertain on whether they are really that ignorant, that they didn't check under the hood and that they really just fell for the superficial language, or whether they are actually real evil and complicit. I think it might be a mixture of the two, but they were amazed like that she just did this, because there was a pilot program supposed to run last year with 3 cities, I think, and they were supposed to report back before they adopted this, and they never reported. They reported back. They just did it. And what you'll find is that the regional development and governance model is part of the Agenda 21 plan and strategy, but also you will find that back in July already, that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma's Department of Cooperative Governance had a meeting with ICLEI Africa, and they decided on it then. So ICLEI, for those people who don't know, is an NGO, a global NGO that trains local governments in sustainability strategies, and they charge for that, so we pay them. It's the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, and they're now known as Governments for Sustainability. You can go to the ICLEI website if you want to see see how big the agenda is and what it all covers, and you can see the membership lists there. You can go look up our municipalities and local governments who are members. It's over 20. It's 27 or something by now, or might even be touching 30. Because some of them have been members for longer than others. But my point is just that organization exists. Its sole purpose is to implement what they call local Agenda 21 in local governments. And that is where the decision was made for this. So DA are either complicit or they just don't read the news and they don't understand what treason looks like. I'm available as a consultant, as I've said a couple of times recently.
Yeah. It's so. Sorry, Russell.
Justus, I wanted to check with you that I remember reading somewhere and I'm not sure where I read it, but that district model, all right, that district management model sort of thing, it actually comes from the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, someone said on Facebook.
But it actually comes from China.
Yeah, someone said on Facebook also.
I remember hearing, which would make sense. Which would make sense because basically the United Nations and everybody, China's the model for the rest of the world for the future.
Well,
the way the Chinese Communist Party run things is the model. That is the model.
People should go look at this district development model proposals, okay? Because it seems like they're already starting to allocate labor to those districts. That's what it looks like. I mean, it's really soft language at the moment, but it says it names a few specialty industries that will be housed in certain development hub districts. I mean, it doesn't. It sounds like they're actually starting to divide labor into work zones.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's the idea behind it. It sounds
very CCP in nature. Very CCP in nature.
Yeah.
So it's basically, I mean, this stuff is full steam ahead. There's no brakes on it at this point in time.
Well, that's the one characteristic you find is that no matter what happens, this goes ahead. Whether you're completely bankrupt, even it still goes ahead.
The show must go on. It's like the show goes on. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So incredibly dedicated to this. It's wow. I mean, okay. Here's the thing. Now, I've heard you say this, Justus, and I think you said it on Facebook somewhere as well, that that these guys, and here's the thing, the idea that something like this is a conspiracy theory is just absolute nonsense. It's like what we like to call on this show, we like to call it, it's a conspiracy fact. Okay, there's definitely conspiracies going on, and it's a fact that they're going on and they're full steam ahead. Okay, so to deny them and to just brush them off as conspiracy theories is just silly at this point in time, especially. But what is there anything that I mean, what can Oaks do? Like, I mean, some lady made a comment in the section over here about our constitution, whether our constitution can save us and all that, which sorry to say, it's just, our
constitution's
actually,
not worth anything.
It's actually made against us and stuff.
One of my main problems with reading our constitution is that it seems like whoever wrote it didn't. They assumed that governments that come in after the apartheid government will not do what every single other government in history basically tries to do, and that is to take total control of people. It's just like the document just assumed innocence after apartheid. I mean,
it was a very liberal democracy. That's why they assumed that, it's the whole liberal idea of the gosh, I don't know. I don't want to get
like a clean slate, clean slate.
Yeah, a clean slate.
Put it this way, whereas the U.S. Constitution is clearly something meant to restrain government, ours doesn't seem to have that purpose at all. So,
now our Bill of Rights actually, it basically extends the power of government. Paradoxically.
Yeah. So
when they start saying that people have got a right to this and a right to electricity and a right to education, you're basically increasing the government's involvement, because government then has to do something.
Yeah, they have to provide those things. So, well, in terms of what do we do? Educate yourself so that you know what it looks like and where it is manifesting in your life, so that you can find ways to not comply with it, because obviously or often complying with it is just the most comfortable option, so people do it by default and they don't question anything about it. And why would they? I mean, it's presented always to them as the smart alternative, the new thing. How can you be so stupid to not adopt this? But that is number one. And it is a long thing to do. So if people want to start understanding this agenda, just make peace with the fact that it's going to take you some time, because it's a very big thing that you're looking at. It's a very big plan. It's all encompassing, and you have to spend time with it and understand it to be able to identify it easier, and then you can more easily not comply with it. Okay. And it's always aimed at gaining control over basically any activity, basically any human activity, but anything that you want to do that is going to expend energy. So and it's going to involve a lot of control over things that we take for granted now, like food and energy and water. So if you can move out to the country, and remember one of the whole goals of Agenda 2030 is to drive people into cities, to have a large part of the population in dense, high density cities, and that's where they say it's for the environment, because your existence, you as a human are not part of the environment. I don't know if they maybe want to tell us something in terms of where we come from, but they don't see you as part of the environment. So anything that you do to live is bad for the environment. So that's why we have to, according to them, pack all of us into tight dense cities. But the real point, or the real goal behind that, is that it's much easier to control people when they are living like that. You can surveil more easily what everyone is doing, which is why we're getting why you'll see that 5G rollout also hasn't stopped. While the rest of the world may have come to a standstill, that hasn't, because that is integral to the surveillance. They need that level of connectivity for the data collection systems that they intend to, well, they're already installing them, but which they intend to install everywhere and control people and monitor what people do and control them with. Because you'll find that a lot of things are going to be start to be rationed. Water is already rationed in Cape Town. Electricity is already, to a degree, being rationed with smart meters. Definitely in Joburg. I don't know about the other cities, although I'm sure they are also doing it. And that is why they want people in cities. They want that kind of control where the resources are rationed and that's what you have. That limits what you can do a lot. I mean, we know with load shedding from experience what happens if your energy is limited. Now, just imagine that with water, with transport, with food, with education, with just anything. There's a video people should go watch, and I'm going to bring it into one of my upcoming videos, but it's been on YouTube for a long time, 10 years almost. It's called Plandopolis. People can go look that up. Plandopolis. It's a 4-minute video. There are many versions of it because in the beginning people tried to take it down and people re-uploaded it in mass. But it's from one of these NGOs called Forum for the Future, I think. And it's a little cartoon giving an illustration of what they think eco-life will look like in, I think, 2040 was their date. But pay attention to the detail of that cartoon. Look at the headlines in the newspaper. Look at the banners and things on buildings. Look at and what take in the detail of what they're saying. Water's being rationed. There's food shortages. There's a global food council. You don't eat meat unless it's your birthday. Only rich people drive their own cars. You book your travel with a calorie allowance on your smartphone. Now, ours won't be calories, it will be carbon credits or some carbon currency, but you book your trips with a ration of calories that you have on your smartphone, and all the trips are planned and timed. Your kids are allocated to a school and allocated to a job after they leave school. Pay attention to those details. That is sustainable development. And obviously it's made to look all happy and fuzzy, but imagine just for a moment, if you can, living your actual life like that.
Yep.
Yeah, so you basically become a farm animal, essentially.
Yeah, but Justus, like I was saying, this sounds that sustainable development and all this, what you've just explained to me, is something that they've torn something straight out of the CCP manual in China, 5G, all this sort of thing. You know, I've often said it for a while that China is the model for the rest of us.
They are the model.
If you look at this COVID thing, all right, China was the model. They wanted to export that model, the Chinese CCP model, to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. And they did. And if you look back at the history of Agenda 21, so the person who was tasked with defining sustainable development for the United Nations was a guy named, I think it was Gro Harlem Brundtland. His last name was Brundtland. And they had the Brundtland Commission, which was tasked with coming up with what sustainable development means. And at the time, he was the vice president of Socialist International. So, you know, it's had that ideological grounding from the very start. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, it just like the United Nations and the internationalists, they love China. They love the CCP.
Yeah, because
they love it. It is their model. If you think with 5G, they're starting out look at it. They started out with exporting via COVID, tyranny via COVID from China. They're exporting 5G from China. Everything is tried out in China first. These cities that they build with these massive high-rise apartments with tiny little where everybody gets crammed in there and they can lock you in like they did with COVID, doors closed and all that sort of thing. What you're saying is straight out of what the CCP does.
Yeah, and that's why I recommend moving out into the country. Like, get out of the cities where you can get to somewhere where you can control your own food and water, or at least have contact with other people around you who grow food, and where you can get water that's not controlled. And if you can at all find a way to, I mean, I don't necessarily mean people should just give up their lives and resettle in the country and start doing something completely different. I am advocating, as I always call it, 1,000 Oranias. And people misinterpret that as being, I want them to be exactly like that. And it's not that. It's just you start your own independent communities. And with independent, I mean your basics, your energy and your water and your food, controlled by you and your own community of whoever you choose to work with. And there needs to be a lot of them, because the next question people always ask me is, won't they be targeted? Yes, they will be targeted, and that's why we need thousands of them. And it doesn't mean you need to give up whatever you are skilled at doing necessarily, because we'll need in these communities dentists who can farm, and doctors who can farm and shoot, and teachers who can farm and shoot. And, skills that you currently have are still useful there if you are in a community of people who may need your skills. Engineers, anyone, you can still apply what you're specialized in now. So people don't want to entertain the idea, because it's in their head, it's the thought of, I have to totally give up what I'm good at and reinvent my life. No, you're just reinventing a part of it. You're making yourself freer, and you can still apply what you're good at. You can find a way to do that. We're adaptable. Find a way to still do that. If you really can't, then, reinventing yourself is still better than being a slave.
Yeah, so that plays into what myself and Russell were talking about, I think, a couple of weeks ago on our show, is that when you are in a small community, you basically control your entire economy. So excuse me. So essentially what you've done is you can create this community that has its own economy and its own sort of system and everything, and you are in control of that.
And there can be smaller ones that interact with each other, They can be smaller, they can be situated close to each other and cooperate with each other, but all of them keep a degree of independence, because that is what you're trying to establish here. Independence with your basics, so that you can't be held ransom with that, because that's what you will find with the rationing that's coming in. You don't get your ration unless you take this shot, or unless you wear your red shirt on Tuesdays. You're not getting your carbon credit ration, and you can't go anywhere. So the point of that is independence for your basic things, so that you can carry on with your life and someone can't hold a gun against your head with one of those basic things. That is the goal of it. So if you can find a better way to do that, be my guest. I just I don't see cities as safe places in the next decade.
Yeah, so I think what we basically need to do, a lot of people are talking about in the comments section about, is there a political party that doesn't support the Agenda 21 story and that sort of thing, and there is that one, what's it called, organic humanity movement, which I think is Double Dez's wife's political party or something, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Now, what I think, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say that is the only political party. They haven't been on the ballot yet. We hope that they will be soon, but that is the only party that I know of that explicitly opposes it. Yeah, I don't know of another party.
So here's the thing: is I personally think that the entire model, so all these ideas that we think we're somehow going to be able to sort of democracy ourselves out of this, and a political party is going to come along and is just going to sort of save us and everything will be fine and all that. I just don't think that's how it's going to happen.
A political party like that is important, though, because it would show people that they're not alone. And,
sure. No.
it is
Don't get
important.
me wrong, but I personally think that they're also trying to change the model. They're trying the whole direct what's it called? Direct elections,
Direct
right?
elections. Yeah.
So
the goal
they're
is
also trying to change the model. You know what I mean? Which is
change the
great.
system. Yeah.
And that's
Because
what has to happen.
Bad. Our system is bad. It's a really bad system.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is the only party I know of. They are going to be touring the country for a while on the direct elections tour. And they're having face-to-face meetings with people in their communities, and that is a good strategy. So for as long as people keep funding them, they will keep doing that, and they are really educating people on the ground as to what we're facing and also what to do about it. So I'm pretty confident they'll have a impact if they can get on the ballot one day, because there's a lot of people that also never vote. And I think it's because even if they don't fully understand all the details of this, it's because they've had a sense that it doesn't make a difference really, or that all the political parties are sort of going to lead you down the same road. And if you have one party that can actually say, look, this is how we really are different to the others. We're worrying about our country first before we're worrying about global ambitions and the global Kumbaya village. Tito Mboweni, I wanted to mention earlier when Russell was talking about how eager our government always is to take up any global governance rubbish. Tito Mboweni actually, when he spoke about introducing the carbon tax, actually motivated it by saying this will make South Africa be seen as one of the positive nations in the world. I mean, that's a reason to have a tax on transport energy, so the rest of the world can see us as popular.
Yeah, it's
Exactly. See what I said.
Yeah, it's little Jimmy. It's little Jimmy syndrome. That kid at school that just would do anything to get attention of someone. So he just takes the earthworm and eats it. That's what South Africa's government is. Little Jimmy. They want to be seen.
Yeah. So we do now have at least a political option, and I'm hoping to persuade other parties to take this seriously, because I think a large part of it was that this was never been their gig, and it's the UN, it sounds great, fine, whatever, and none of them want to obviously be associated with anything called a conspiracy theory, because what will the people think? But I think that I'm working on a strategy to convince at least some of the smaller ones to consider this, because it's obvious now after this whole pandemic the influence that the United Nations has on our government. I mean, they're not even hiding it. They are calling Tedros their brother and thanking him for basically leading our country through this. And they've said that we couldn't end lockdown. I think back in July, we can't end lockdown because we don't meet the World Health Organization standards, even though our numbers at that stage was a joke compared to the rest of the world. And it's not something that you can deny anymore. So maybe more of them are willing to listen now and take it seriously. But I don't know if there will be enough of them to be effective on a large scale. People just have to take control of things themselves. Start your own communities. Take control of
the will of the people.
Yeah. Just because
I think there are some political parties that aren't internationalist in nature, whether or not they're anti this whole Agenda 21 and the United Nations is another question. But there are smaller political parties that aren't internationalist. The big two, the three biggest definitely are. But after that, I don't know how internationalist the rest are. They might be very open to actually looking closely and at all these, in light of what's gone on the last 6 months, especially. They might be very interested in actually taking a closer look at the very least.
Yeah, because it is ultimately one of the big number one objection to me always has been that it destroys a country's sovereignty. And if your government is going to be committed and obliged to following this agenda and its goals, then basically what you vote for doesn't matter. So maybe if parties start understanding that, and that sovereignty is important after all, it's not something old-fashioned. I think we've seen now why it's not something old-fashioned. Maybe then we can get some action going on this front, because I do believe there's a lot of it that political parties don't understand. I mean,
I think that's also
like we've been looking at this for so long. It is just outright treason. That's what it is.
Oh, without a doubt. Like the whole thing, Justus, is that and it's interesting that you said right at the beginning of the video about what it is that you're trying to do, and that Oaks must just sort of go out there and do what it is that you do, and try and get the message out there as best as you can in your own capacity and that sort of thing. I think that I think that is probably one of the best things that people can actually do, is just sort of educate people about this whole thing. Talk to people about it, because it's so blatant.
And educate yourself. Like, it's a lot. I still learn new stuff every week. It doesn't end, because this thing is evolving, and they change names and labels, but it means the same thing. And so it's not like you're going to read some short book and then you know all about it. You need to keep your finger on the pulse, and then it's much easier to explain to people why it's bad, and for you to not comply. It's much easier.
So a lot of guys in the comments section over here are talking about education and stuff. So obviously homeschooling, we're pretty pro homeschooling on this channel. I've spoken to you, Justus, about it before as well. And so Vanita Gent says, educate your children, vital, teach values. They won't be governed, indoctrinated like the youth of now, who fully believe in global warming. But that's vitally important. Yes, I think one of the best things that you can do as a family or whatever it is just sort of raise your children right. Keep them away from this indoctrination. The reality of it is, I joke that I'm going to raise my children and I'm going to indoctrinate them into Christianity, and all my atheist friends literally have a giant shit about it and stuff. And they're like, oh, you're indoctrinating your child. And I'm like, well, someone else is going to indoctrinate them anyway, you know what I mean? So I might as well be me, you know what I mean? So it's important then to just sort of, teach your children, raise your family, and like she says, Vanetta Gent, I don't know if it's he or she, says, teach values, and they'll, I think that's vitally important. One of the biggest things that you can do as against this thing as well, against this whole Agenda 21 stuff, right? Do you agree?
I do agree, and that is also what a lifestyle out of the city will afford you. More time to actually do that, up until a point, obviously. But also, we have so many tools as parents now to teach kids basic things. Like my eldest daughter is now 3, and I mean, she watches quite a lot of stuff on YouTube, educational stuff, and so on. We monitor that very closely. But she knows things that there's no way that I knew that by the time I went to primary school, even. So she just the languages. We're actually Afrikaans speaking, and she is already way more bilingual than I was, even at age 8 or 9. So there are a lot of tools that you can use to help you as a parent. You need to obviously monitor them and make sure that it's all above board and stuff. But it's not as hard as it sounds, especially for small kids. But it's definitely an important part of keeping the next generation out of its claws. Yes. It's taking control over what goes into kids' minds.
So just from this chat that we've had, Justus, what I'm getting, or it's kind of what I understand of this, but just a summary of it is Agenda 21 is real. It's happening all around us. It's unavoidable and it's blatant and in your face, and it's there, okay? The central staging area of Agenda 21 would obviously be the cities. So try and get out of the cities as best as you can. I see my dad over here commenting on the video. He says, we are running on a generator at the moment. You see, my old man's 75, okay? And he watches us and all the other oaks on YouTube and everything. And, you know, he's 75. He has a self-sustaining house. You know, he's 75 and he's just about to put up, you know, solar panels and stuff on his house. And they live in a small town in the middle of nowhere, basically. And they have, when the water stops coming from the town water, they've got water. You know, when the electricity stops coming, they have electricity. If the grocery shop's closed, my mother has a vegetable garden where she can eat and where they can eat and all that sort of thing. So like that sort of thing, like people need to learn how to do that sort of thing. And I think part of Agenda 21's sort of gradual process and stuff was making sure that people aren't able to do that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Because the average oak our age can't do that sort of stuff. You know, can't build, can't weld, can't woodwork, can't plant, can't hunt, can't garden, can't do all of these things. And I think it's vitally important for you to teach yourself, or at least learn from someone else, how to do that. Would you agree?
Yeah. No, I do agree. I was lucky in that regard, in that I did, growing up, my granddad was a farmer. He passed away in 2015. But as a kid, I think from the time I was 18 months old, I first went there with him because he was delivering vegetables between his farm and Joburg and Pretoria. And we lived in Pretoria, so he'd pick me up and I went there for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time. And so I spent a lot of time there, and he was that kind of person. Like, when you're 40 or 50 k's away from a town and your tractor breaks and you need to do something right now, you fix it yourself. And if push comes to shove and you have to even make a part fit in somewhere just for the time being so that you can get things done, then that's the way you do it. So I observed that, and I'm a little bit like that myself now. So absolutely, I won't say I'm anywhere near the level that he was at with it, but it's very important to teach yourself things like that. Yeah, absolutely. Because, and again, the goal is to make yourself more independent, because dependence is going to be their bribe card to make you take things that you don't want to take.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. They want you to be dependent on you. Yes, Russell.
Yeah, look, I'm all for, you know, if people move to smaller towns, the nice thing about you may not have much in a smaller town, but what you have is yours. In other words, you are dictating terms to the economy, not the other way around. At the moment, myself and Scott working and most people working in a city, we serve the economy. The economy doesn't serve us. Whereas in a small sort of town situation, you can manage your economy well yourselves, and you can have the economy work for you, not you for the economy. And that's something that Agenda 21 is basically, yeah, we'll create the economy, but we'll control you in it. So you're basically the slave in the machine, or the, you know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, they use your labor to build it bigger, stronger, and effectively. So you're working for them. You aren't actually working for anything that you can benefit from in the long run.
No.
Yeah, I'm yeah. This has been a really, really interesting chat. I think we've just gone over an hour. Russell,
I want to just give people I just want to give people like one hallmark that you can look for in important fields of sustainable development, where we talk about your basic resources, right? And this is the and this is why it's economic poison. Okay, it's the phenomenon that I call demand management or demand side management. Now, all of us have heard of the supply and demand chain, and what we do in market economies is that the supplies cater for the demand. When there's a demand for something, there is a supply that fills that void. They don't see it like that. They turn it the other way around. For them, the pie is one size, and they're not going to supply the demand, because in their minds, making that pie bigger is bad for the planet. And they're going to, rather than supply the demand, they are going to manage the demand, which means rationing you. So if you see a water affairs or water legislation or a water minister or a city councillor talking about anything water or electricity or transport,
even
and they
carbon
talk
taxes
about,
and that sort of thing as well.
when they talk about demand management or demand side management, you know that's what they mean.
So it's I don't know. I still, I still can't get over. If you say even just the word globalist, okay, in polite conversation, that's why my wife doesn't like me going with her to Bry's or whatever, because I always, I'll go and I'll sit there and I'll sit around the Bry or whatever, and some oak will mention the DA and all that, and then I'll sort of tweak up and be like, oh, someone's talking politics or whatever. So I'll jump in there and I'll end up, embarrassing my wife, because I'll start talking about globalists and, the oligarchs and, the United Nations and all these things, you know what I mean? I'll start talking about them and and all of that, and then I'll just embarrass my wife. But it's in polite conversation, oaks don't talk about these things. They don't. Either they don't talk about it, or when you start talking about it, they laugh at you, or they say you bloody nuts.
It's a big problem. And I don't know if it's a uniquely white South African problem, but it's definitely a South African problem that I've been told, I don't know, thousands of times probably growing up, that you don't discuss at parties. You don't discuss politics and religion.
Yeah, it's literally the only thing you can discuss at my Bry's. It's like you come Bry at my house. It's like the only thing you'll ever discuss. It's like literally tomorrow.
It's a big deal for some people.
Brying, and it's like.
Yeah, but Justus, you don't understand. You don't understand. Myself and Scott were raised to be controversial, so controversy is kind of what we feed off. That's why we've got the show Reactionary Opinions, because we actually we appreciate people that are outrageous. You've been very calm tonight. You should have been more outrageous.
Yeah.
Hey, talking about outrageous. I want you talking about outrageous, Justus. I want you to tell our viewers now why the UN and these globalists are Luciferians. Can you? I mean, I've heard you mention it before, but I don't know. I mean,
I can tell you, but it's going to kind of. If everyone promises to still go watch my video on it, because it's going to be like.
You haven't released the video yet on it?
No, and it's because it's supposed to be a project part of something bigger. I already told you I want to start sort of.
No, we won't spoil. Don't spoil the video. Don't spoil the video. Then don't tell us what it's about. Just tell us about the video's coming up. That's all, and we'll go and watch it.
I mean, there's going to be more in the video than this. So. But it is part of a bigger thing that I want to build on. I spoke about before where I want to approach smaller parties. I'm creating something called the Sovereignty and Secession Coalition, and it's going to come after that video is released. But so why this is a Luciferian agenda? Let me rather put it that way, or inspired agenda. There is an organization that has served as a publishing company for United Nations materials for a very long time. I can't remember the exact date, but you can go look it up if you want. And they have also been they've had special consultative status on the United Nations Economic and Social Council since 1989, which is 3 years before Agenda 21 was signed. Special consultative status on the Economic and Social Council, and their area of expertise, according to the United Nations website, was they've updated the website. I've took screenshots of it. Their area of expertise is sustainable development. They're called the Lucis Trust. They were initially called the Lucifer Publishing Company, and they changed their name to the Lucis Trust. You can go to the Lucis Trust website and see how totally non-crackpot and esoteric they are. What this organization has to do with sustainable development is anyone's guess. Go to their website, go to the Lucis Trust website and see what it looks like. And there's an article you can look for there called The Esoteric Meaning of Lucifer. And you will also find an article on there where they talk something about some special full moon or something at one of the Agenda 2030 conferences. So, I mean, it's a full-on occult organization. What they have to do with sustainable development, I mean, I think I know, but on the surface, it's anyone's freaking guess. But they've been there since the start.
Well, not shocking. Just like I didn't know it would be so blatant as well. So in your face again. Just
well, look, like I said, nothing surprises me these days. It's bad. It's not good to have to hear that, but it doesn't surprise me. Put it that way. To be able to implement what you want to implement in such a sociopathic way without any empathy whatsoever, you have to actually be a madman, a quite close to a devil. You know what I mean? To be able to be that type of person.
You will also find that a lot of their terminology actually means the complete opposite of what it says. So yeah, they invert everything. And here's something that I think most religious, and not only Christian, other religions too, will understand, that is that many religions are built on the natural order of man over nature. Man rules over nature as the custodian of nature, and they totally invert that too.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
Put nature over man. Yeah.
Well, it's also visible in sort of cultural Marxism. It's where they take everything that was normal and stuff and flip it upside down and stuff. And that's kind of another, that's why things like cultural Marxism and all these ideas, they're all basically, branches of, Luciferianism or Satanism and that sort of thing. They're all sort of linked, and that you mentioned where they flip everything upside down is a hallmark sign of Luciferian behavior, satanic behavior, and so on, or occult behavior.
Yeah. One example of that, of their terms being completely a complete inversion of what we would normally understand it to mean, is inclusion. Inclusion is it's one of the key terms in the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. You'll find it a lot, but you and I know what inclusion means. It means excluding everything that's conservative white male.
Yeah, it means basically the exclusion of normalcy, I guess.
Inclusion means selective exclusion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's basically what it means. Whatever they.
Yeah.
That's exclusion. It's inclusion, but exclusion for anything that doesn't suit their thing. So it's.
If it's anything to do with conservative traditional families, then it's excluded. It's not included. Correct. Inclusion means everything else.
Yeah. So it's everything besides that. You know what I mean? That's what they mean by inclusion.
Like that. A lot of their terms are like that. So sustainable development, even if you understand what it does, it puts a damper on development. It controls development because it inherently sees that all development is bad for the planet, and therefore it needs to be controlled and curtailed and kept in check. And the opposite is actually true, is that the more we develop, the more sustainable we become. We find alternatives for resources. We start making new things out of new things, and we continuously better that anyway. That is what we've always done, and they pose as if, the sustainable development is really what is bringing us all the sensibilities. But I mean, car manufacturers have since forever tried to make a car more efficient, more economical. It's something we do anyway, but it places a damper on development. The more we develop, the more sustainable we become, and they invert that too. It's not sustainable development, it's unsustainable stagnation. That's
unsustainable destruction.
They're always trying to manage things. It irritates me. Always trying to manage things which are not manageable.
Yeah, precisely. It is the global controlled planned economy. That is what it is. And the underlying assumption is that there's too many humans. So where do you think it's meant to end up? It's meant to make us less. And that is what happens if you make energy unaffordable, and if you make it hard for people to move around, and if you ration their water and you ration services. And that is what ends up happening. People just naturally die off faster, I guess. But there's many other ways in which, look at the sustainable high density developments we sort of briefly started talking about earlier. These places are tiny, even the ones that are marketed as upmarket. They are 25 to 45 square meters. You can't raise 2 children in that. If you're lucky, if you can raise one without losing your mind, or without the kid losing its mind. It's made for people to not breed. And there are many other ways, but it's a population control program.
Yeah, so now, Mr. Patriarch, sorry, he had to leave the show. His internet completely tanked and stuff. So in the comments section over here, he says, you must take some male vitality before the stream, because like Alex Jones over here.
Super male vitality.
Vitality, yeah. But anyway, I saw an interesting... Yeah,
I actually cut half of my nose off when I was shaving just before the show. Like, pick that time to cut yourself with a freaking razor.
So I see, Dagbreker over here made a really interesting comment over here. He said that is exactly what Lucifer said to the Father. Look at what your humans are doing. They can't look after themselves. And that's exactly how it works. And that's, that ties directly into the idea that these oaks are Luciferians. And that's, I'm looking forward to that video coming out, Justus. Do you know when it's coming out? Or?
No, I don't. I have a backlog, and the reason why it's hard for me to write that specific one is I have to go research the UN website, because when I wrote a blog about this 2 years ago and I took the screenshots, they've since changed and updated the websites, and they move things around. So now I've got to go find all that crap again. But I know it's there, and it's easy to find on the Lucis Trust website themselves, but I want it from the other side too. So as soon as I'm through my backlog and I have time to sit down and actually go do all that and find it again, then I'll do it.
So anyway, I think this was a really interesting conversation. We've gone over an hour. To those of you that are listening, thanks for listening. Don't forget to go to Justus's channel. It's Agenda 21 Truth South Africa. Remember, that's how you have to search it. Otherwise, you'll struggle to find it. So just go Agenda 21 Truth South Africa, and you'll find it, because I think there's quite a few Agenda 21 YouTube channels, but just make sure you write the Truth South Africa, and you'll find it. I'll also post it in the link on the description of the video as well. Mr. Patriarch says depopulation is the universal goal for these people. Get in the pod, eat bugs, consume product.
And they're serious about eating bugs, by the way.
Mm.
I know on my Facebook page, if people are willing to put themselves through the torture and go down the timeline to about 2015 or 14 or somewhere there were articles on 702 and from the Netherlands and I think from the UK promoting the idea of eating bugs instead of meat for burgers, like mealworms and things for your protein instead of meat.
Oof.
They're serious about that, yeah.
Sis, man. Citizen Guardian says over here in the Mad Max original movies, chaos goes down in 2021. Just to go. And yep, Agenda
Prophetic.
21 is a real situation. Yeah, that's quite prophetic, actually. Well, maybe it was made that way. I don't know. But, anyway, Justus, are there any comments that you want to give some ending comments or closing comments, statements?
Well, I am about to launch a website. It was mainly, I mainly just had to do it because recently I had to have a little heart-to-heart with my audience about the fact that this is now my job and I need to be have some sort of stable funding, and they were great and they were all very accepting of it. And I'm busy setting up my website to basically firstly make that easier, but I'll build it up over time. I'm intending to also host my video content there, and I'll continue with YouTube as long as they allow me, but so that whenever that goes away, my content is still on my website and we'll post articles there and people can comment on articles and things posted there. It's not quite ready yet. It should be by Tuesday latest. I can't give you the address yet, but I'll make a video to announce it too, so people will see it there.
Looking forward to that. That is very, very cool. I think over here, what's his name? The wizard says he never misses a video, any of your videos. So,
I see him there often.
Yeah. So, So the guys that have listened and stuff, Mr. Patriarchy says, a travesty. You can't bribe bugs. So, yeah. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. This was a really, really great chat. Sorry, it's also a great channel. Go and check out Justus's channel. I'll put the link in the description, and go and support the Oak. He puts out a lot of, like I said in the beginning of the thing, if you're looking for content in South Africa, that is, this is the whole thing, and we've spoken about this, Justus, on our show, is that most of the South African YouTubers are just like, ANC bad, ANC corrupt, police
yeah, it's
bad,
just basic. It's
Becky Cele bad kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, and like everyone's saying that over and over again. We want to get to the nuts and bolts of why we're in this situation, and what the conversation that we're having tonight is kind of that. It's kind of a layer of,
We're not. We don't do that. We specifically decided not to be that type of channel and to actually scratch below the surface a bit.
Oh yeah, it's very important because these party fights between each other, it's often just for show. I mean, they have drinks afterwards. It's they're serving a bigger agenda, and they're cooperating on that agenda, even though they fight about other frivolous things. There's some things that they agree on, and they will not deviate from that. And this is one of them. The three main parties are united on this very much. They're all not only support of the UN, but also the African Union. And I mean, we never consented to even belong to either of those. We were just one-day members, and to impose this global style policy on us, and then still have us vote about things as if it matters. It's a kind of a shame.
But you forget, Justus, South Africa was a charter member of the United Nations.
Yeah, they were, but was there a referendum?
No.
Where was for the African Union? They just one day changed the name of the what was it? Organization for African Unity.
For African Unity, yeah. Yeah, it was that.
So
anyway.
And it's a hallmark of these things. It's like with the EU, they number one, if they do get a referendum, sometimes, the thing always evolves into something else. Like some of the people vote, I can't remember, somewhere in the 70s, they did have a referendum on joining the European Economic Community, I think. I can't remember if it was that or the EU already. But anyway, since that happened, the EU is not the same thing anymore. It's the same with us being a charter member of the United Nations. Since the United Nations was created, which was supposed to be a peacekeeping organization, I mean, what is UNESCO? What is UNICEF? What is the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization? Do people know what Codex Alimentarius is? Codex Alimentarius is a code that the World Trade Organization use concerning everything with food and trade between countries. Where did we ever get a say in any of this?
Yeah,
exactly. This is why we don't bother with little party politics and nonsense on this channel. We talk big stuff here.
Yeah. The thing is, all that party politics stuff is essentially just false flags in my mind.
It's white noise and falsehoods.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a show. It's a. I think David Icke used to call them opposames. They present themselves as opposites, but there are key things on which they are exactly the same, and you can't get away from it.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, we must run. This is a really, really good chat, guys. Thank you so much to all our listeners out there. Thank you, Justus, for coming on. Go and subscribe to Justus's channel. Those of you that are cross-pollinating and watching from Justus's channel, go ahead and like our video and give us a subscribe as well. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Stay reactionary out there again, because God wills it.
God wills it.